our life. And because of them, my daughter has a place to be herself. And it's okay to be smart and goofy and quirky and spunky. Josh knows each of our children. He knows them by name. He knows their quirks, and he knows their laughs, and he knows their tears. Missy is amazing. Our board is amazing. What they've been through in the last year and a half is sad. But they did it. And they did it with gusto, and they did it with a smile, and I can't thank them enough. My husband can't thank them enough. And I wanted to let them know by having you all here, having myself here, that we're behind you, we support you. Everyone makes mistakes. Families are messy, and it happens. And if you can't forgive and learn from your mistakes, then there's a different problem we need to work on. We're learning from our mistakes. They happen, and some of them are yucky, and we don't like them, but we're learning from them so they don't happen again. And we have to forgive and move on. So again, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting our school. Let's continue to do it. Let's rise as one. We love Stargate. Woo!
All right, I'm not sure how I'm going to follow that. Thanks for that. So we're going to get started with the board communication. It is great to see so many faces here. No matter if you are someone who right now has issues with Stargate, someone who is just here to learn more, someone who is a supporter, we welcome everyone. And this really is an opportunity for us as a board. And sorry, my name is Brad Schoenfeld. I'm the parent director of the board. We've got Elizabeth Williams, who's our treasurer and also a parent of children here at school as a board member. I believe that Callie Herzog, another board member, will be attending as well, but she may be caught in a light, I don't know. Oh, she is coming in right now. Yeah, So just there's a lot of material that we're actually going to go through today, and one of the reasons why we wanted to do this town hall is, and listen, it's a common theme that we hear year after year after year in terms of being more transparent, and we really do try to be as transparent as we can. There are some things that, as a board, we have access to information that we cannot share with respect to particular students or particular community members, staff members, due to privacy concerns and due to confidentiality. But we really do try as best we can to keep the community informed. Can we do better? Sure. We can always do better. And so that's one of the things that I know that we feel as a group that is extremely important to us, because we know it's extremely important to the community. And so this was, in some ways, an attempt to start that process. And so we gave this presentation on March 19th. And since then, there's been a few updates. So we've updated the presentation a very small amount based upon some of the updates that we'll go through. I am going to apologize to you right now in that I'm going to be reading a lot because there is a lot of content and I don't think I could have memorized it all. So if I am looking down at the screen and reading to you. I just want to make sure everyone hears what we're trying to communicate. Couple of sort of, I guess, ground rules. One, this isn't a formal board meeting. There's no open mic or public comment. But what we're going to do is there was an opportunity for people to submit questions. And so we've taken all of those questions. We've tried to compile them, try to consolidate them. We're going to go through a whole question and answer portion as a part of the presentation where we are going to answer questions that were submitted to us. We will also then stick around for, let's say, 30 minutes or so after the presentation to answer just questions from the audience. I know that there may be questions that we're not going to get to. And so that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear your questions and we don't want to answer them. It just means that we all have other things that we need to be doing and can't stay here all day long. But we are always available, and I'll go through the ways to communicate with the board. And if we don't answer your question, or you've got a question that you think about after this, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will do our best to respond as quickly as possible. So again, there's a lot of content, so I'm going to get started if everyone's on board. Just to give you and level set what we're going to be doing today with this presentation, it's broken down into a few different areas. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what it means to be a charter school. I think that is very important for everybody to understand, whether you are a parent at Stargate, a prospective parent at Stargate, because we're different. We're going to talk about our relationship at Adams 12 and what the interaction is between us as a charter school and Adams 12 and as our authorizer. We're going to talk about communicating with the board. We're going to talk about the OCR complaint status. So we're going to walk through each of the OCR complaints that we've received and what the current status is, what we've done, and what we need to do. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session where we will answer the questions that were submitted and hopefully get to other questions that people may have. So, first thing, I want to read the Stargate mission, because this is what we as a school were striving to make sure each and everything that we do every day is focused on the mission, and we've always got to keep this in mind in every decision that we make. So Stargate's mission, Stargate School will provide a differentiated program designed specifically to meet the needs of identified intellectually gifted learners in order to challenge each student's academic abilities, support their unique emotional needs, promote individual character development, and encourage a lifelong love of learning. And we read this before every board meeting, and that's because we as a board, this is what we're committed to. And when we make decisions, we always need in the back of our minds to be thinking about this mission. So what does it mean to be a charter school? So charter schools are independent public schools. We are free to make decisions on issues specifically to our school, such as our curriculum, structuring the school day, creating a balanced budget, and hiring teachers who meet the needs of our students. Charter schools are unique in that they have a board of directors at the school level, as opposed to a traditional public school, which are governed by the local district, which has its own board of directors. Funding of a charter school. So like traditional public schools, charter schools do receive funding provided through federal, state, and local district funds based on enrollment levels on a per pupil basis. But there are some key differences between what we as a charter school get and what a traditional public school gets. School districts finance their facilities using property taxes, mill levies, and local bonds. Charter schools historically have not received a proportionate share of these funds, and at Stargate, we receive about 20% less per student in public funding than the average peer student in a traditional public school. And so, what does that mean? It means that we, like many other charter schools, must find alternative revenue sources, including fundraising campaigns. And I know that there's a number of members of the fundraising committee here. And listen, I really appreciate the thanks that we get as a board, but it's not just the board. There are so many committee members and so many other people that do things here at Stargate that allow this place to exist, and fundraising is one of those key groups. They've helped raise so much money, and they're just an amazing group of folks who are committed to the school, so thank you to the fundraising committee. So the functions of Stargate's Board of Directors. Our functions are really defined in the bylaws, and these include determining the character of the school and upholding the school's mission, creating a strategic vision and plan, establishing overall policy by which the school is administered and are managed, to ensure the financial stability of the school through fiscal and financial oversight, and to be accountable for the financial health of the school, to institute and promote fundraising efforts for the school, to ensure that the school has appropriate resources to effectively implement the strategic plan and execute the day-to-day operations of the school. These are really comprehensive. We as a board cannot do this alone, so that's why we have lots of committees, we have individuals that we designate to, but we certainly make sure that we try to get the right people to be helping out with things that they have experience with, that they have expertise, and again, we couldn't do it without the support of all of these other individuals and committee members. So the composition of the Stargate board. Per the bylaws, the board is comprised of 5 parent members and up to 4 independent members. Right now, we only have 1 independent member. So if you know of folks in the community who have a passion for helping the community, who have a passion about education, we'd love to talk to more folks to see about whether or not they would be a good fit as an independent director. We've tried over the years to increase the number of independent directors, and certainly welcome their involvement. So each parent member is elected by the Stargate community and serves a 3-year term. If there is a vacancy prior to the end of a term, we actually appoint a replacement, but that appointment only stays in their position until the next election. They don't automatically stay on until the end of the term of the person they're replacing. For example, Elizabeth Williams, who was appointed earlier this year, her term will end at the end of this year. And as hopefully most of you know, we have an upcoming election for the board. So if you are interested in running for the board, please put in your application. There's a link on the website that goes to our recruiting committee, and so please, if you want to get involved, we welcome applications for the upcoming election. Independent members are appointed by the board, so they don't go through the formal election process. Here are your current Stargate board members. Great pictures. But Jan Coleman is the president. Callie, who I introduced, is the vice president. Taylor Johnson is the secretary. Elizabeth Williams, the treasurer. Myself as the parent director, and Christina McMillan is our 1 independent director. And just so you know, Christina McMillan actually will be moving off as an independent director because her child actually got into Stargate for kindergarten, and she now, as a parent, can no longer be an independent director. So as of the end of this year, right now, we will not have any independent directors. Again, the need showing for, let's try to get some great independent folks to join us. So types of meetings. So the board conducts different types of meetings. First, we've got business meetings. These are used to conduct the business of the school. It requires a quorum, which means that we need to have at least 3 members of the board present in order for us to actually hold a meeting and to take any action. We make motions in order to make decisions. We have to post notice of those meetings at least 24 hours prior to the meeting, and we allow for public comment. One of the things, just so people know, if you come into a board meeting, we welcome everyone to come to a board meeting, when we do public comment, the board actually can't act or respond to matters during the public comment. We certainly listen, and we will follow up with you about things that need to be followed up on. But it's not that we're ignoring the public comment. Our meetings, business meetings, are meant for business to be done for the school per the agenda. And so the public comment are things really that are not on the agenda, not things that we're going to be conducting business on that night, but it doesn't mean that we're not listening. We also take minutes, and those minutes just, I think it's also important to know, those minutes are not meant to be a transcript. Those minutes are meant to be a summary of the business that's conducted at the board. There's been questions about why not record our meetings, why not videotape, video those meetings, and we looked into it. And part of the reason that we don't do it is because once we start doing it, we have to keep those forever. And we don't have the financial resources or capacity to do that. We've researched with other charter schools, and best practices have told us year after year that we shouldn't do it. Now, that being said, I think we're being streamed right now. There are parents who have volunteered to post and video, whether they're going to post it on YouTube Live or what have you. We're fine with that. And we actually welcome it because it does give an opportunity to people who can't be here or can't be at a meeting to see what we're talking about. And we understand that the Wednesday meetings might not work with your schedule. So to the extent that parents want to keep on videoing and streaming, we just appreciate let us know that you're going to do it. But thank you for actually doing it. I think it's a great for the community. Planning meetings. Planning meetings are just like our business meetings, except we don't make formal decisions. So we don't make motions, we don't actually make decisions, and minutes are not taken. We also have executive sessions. Executive sessions are used for confidential discussions regarding specific topics that, by law, under Colorado statute, these are things that need to be discussed during an executive session. The statute is actually Colorado Revised Statute, Section 24.64024, and the items that are worthy of or require executive session include things such as legal matters, personnel matters, or discussions related to individual students. And again, that goes to the privacy issues, where we want to make sure that we're protecting the privacy of students and community members. Similar to our business meetings, an executive session requires a quorum of at least 3 or more members, and similar to a planning session, in executive session, we cannot make any motions. It is just for discussion. So if after an executive session we want to make a decision, we will come out of executive session, go back into, for example, a business session, and make a motion from there. But we don't make any decisions in executive session. We have to give notice again of the executive session of at least 24 hours, and in most cases we actually we have to record those executive sessions. So those are recorded audio, and we have to keep those for 90 days by law. Okay, our relationship with Adams 12. So Adams 12 is our authorizer. They're the authorizer of our charter. And so what do these mean? These terms are very important. So a charter is the legal agreement that sets the expectation for the school and authorizer over a set term. It defines the school's rights to manage the school, and it also defines the authorizer's monitoring and oversight responsibilities. The authorizer, for us, Adams 12, that is the entity that is granting the charter. And the authorizer generally is the local school district, but not always. In some cases, the state via the Colorado Charter School Institute can be the authorizer. So as I said, Adams 12, 5-star school district, is our authorizer. As our authorizer, the district provides certain support services to Stargate. These can take different forms. Some of the key functions that they provide to us is central administrative support, standardized test materials, and they do provide some human resources support. But they do not provide day-to-day operations So they don't oversee personnel matters, they don't oversee personnel evaluations, and they are not involved in staff compensation. When we do compensation, and if you attended the finance town hall that Elizabeth led, we talked a little bit about that. So I don't really want to go into a lot of detail here, but we as a school use Adams 12, their financial schedule that they use for their teachers and their administration. We use that as a guide for our school. We also look at other districts, other charter schools, but at the end of the day, we as a charter school actually have the discretion to set our own compensation for our staff, obviously limited by the budget that we have. So our charter is renewed every 5 years based on performance. The current charter that we are working on, which when it was renewed, moved us from a K-8 to a K-12 school. That was done in 2014. I guess I can do my first grade math. In 2019, we will have a new charter renewal, will be up for renewal in 2019. We have already started the process. We've started the process for our renewal, and we have begun discussions with the district, and we're confident that our charter is going to be renewed. But obviously, we're going to work and do everything that we can with the district in order to make sure that happens. Okay, communicating with the board. So there are a few different ways to communicate with the board. One is public comment during board meetings. As I mentioned earlier, we cannot act or respond to matters presented during public comment, but we hear you, and we will follow up with you if it's appropriate, or sometimes we'll actually delegate a person, a couple people, to get back to you. It may not be the board as a whole. We might delegate some folks to get back to you to address any concern or question that you might have. The communication pathways, and these are for complaints. These are on the website, and I really can't stress enough the importance of trying to, the importance of following the communication pathways. We have separate communication pathways for the elementary school, for the secondary school, as well as for athletics and clubs. And each communication pathway follows a pragmatic escalation process that starts with the applicable individual. If you've got a concern with someone, the best thing to do is talk to that person. It's amazing how things can get done if you actually talk to the person that you have an issue with. So it starts with the individual, and then for issues that don't get resolved, there is an escalation process that ends with the board. And if you follow the communication process, we really do believe that it will result in things getting resolved more efficiently and more amicably. Also, general questions that aren't complaints that would go through the communication pathways, you can email us, governance@stargateschool.org. That goes to each and every member of the board. We typically will designate one person to respond to you. Part of the reason we do one person, if we have a dialogue that includes 3 or more people, it's technically a board meeting. So there's lots of rules related to the board that we have to make sure that we follow, and we don't want to run afoul of any of those rules. So we typically will designate one person to get back to you. That doesn't mean that the rest of the board doesn't know what's going on, but it just means that we're trying to comply with the formalities of how board meetings are handled. So I just posted up here, don't expect that. You can read them, they're on the website, but as you can see, these are the escalation process, our communication pathways. Again, this is for elementary, there's secondary, and for athletics and clubs. And these are works in progress. It's an iterative process. We're always looking to make improvements. So for example, we'll go through the OCR complaint. One of the issues that we had was identifying our Title IX coordinator. We'll be updating our communication pathways to reflect our Title IX coordinator. But again, these are pathways that we think, if they're followed, they will hopefully end in resolutions quicker and easier. But if we see that we can improve them, we will continually try to do so. Okay, so OCR complaint status. So the Office of Civil Rights, when we say OCR, it's the Office of Civil Rights. And the OCR is tasked with ensuring that all students and families are treated fairly regardless of race, religious differences, disabilities, physical or otherwise, or gender. And the Office of Civil Rights is a federal organization, and they are responsible for enforcing certain laws for which they have been given oversight. So Title IX, that is related to discrimination on the basis of sex. There's Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, or origin. There's Title 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1974, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. The Age Discrimination Act of 1975, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of age. Title II of the American with Disabilities Act of 1990 prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability. The Boy Scouts of America Equal Access Act, that was enacted as part of the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, and this prohibits the denial of access or other discrimination against the Boy Scouts or other Title 36 USC youth groups in public schools or education systems with open access. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the various OCR complaints that we received, and as I mentioned, we'll go through each one and try to highlight for you what the complaint was. I can't get into specifics. I'm not going to mention student names or the specific actions that are the subject of these. There are some folks who have posted things on websites that might have that detail. They have every right to do so, but we as a board, we're not going to post anything related to any individuals. So again, I'll go through kind of a summary and then what the OCR found and what we're doing as a result of the OCR's findings. So the first complaint was an allegation that we discriminated against a student on the basis of disability and national origin, and this was filed on January 12th of 2017. On July 11th, 2017, the OCR issued its findings stating that the school violated Section 504 and Title II, specifically that we failed to evaluate the student in a timely manner. We made a unilateral placement decision for the student rather than a group of people knowledgeable about the student as required by Section 504. Section 504 actually requires, when you're making placements and decisions, you have a group of people who are knowledgeable about the student. And so it was determined that we didn't have that group of people involved, and then failed to conduct a manifestation determination before significantly changing the student's placement. So based on those findings, the OCR, they issue to us resolutions. They basically tell us what they would like us to do. And so, and not what they'd like us to do, what they require us to do. So the resolution for OCR number one, the first one was that we needed to conduct staff training about non-discrimination to include evaluations, placement, implementation of IEPs, that's individual education plans, and 504 plans. We have completed that training. We have confirmed the completion of that training to the OCR, and there's no further action required. We needed to send a memo to the staff regarding non-discrimination based on disability, race, color, or national origin. That memo has been sent out. It has been confirmed to the OCR, and the OCR has confirmed that no further action is required. We have ongoing monitoring and reporting responsibilities to OCR. We need to inform them of all special education referrals for evaluations made between July 15, 2017 and December 31st of 2017. We've sent that to the OCR. It's been confirmed by them and no further action. But we also have continuing monitoring. We need to continue to monitor all special education referrals and evaluations made between January 1st of this year through May 31st of this year and report that to the OCR. And that's in process because May 31st hasn't happened yet. So once we reach that May 31st time, we have about a month to get that to the OCR, so that is due the end of June, and we'll submit that to the OCR at the end of June.
And I think on that note, it's important, I'm gonna jump in.
Sure.
The referrals that we make are if anybody mentions that they like special education testing or considered for testing, or they just say, my child is struggling with this. So when those referrals come up, that kind of initiates that child find process for us within our special department. This year we started with 42 IEPs. We're going to end the year over 70. So that's over 30 kids in 1 year that we've added. And they take an average of 16 and a half hours of time per child to do the referral, the testing, having the meetings and things like that. So you can calculate out those minutes, right? We're having over 30 kids plus tested, 16 and a half hours per child. That's a lot of staff time spent referring and testing students for IEPs. And we have to increase that capacity of staff as we're getting better with this stuff. So we are adding more learning specialists, more psychologists to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids. But I think it's just important to any mathematicians, Mr. Haney was over here, what's 30 times 16 and a half off the top of your head? A lot.
All right, nice job. And then we needed, for OCR Complaint 1, to provide compensatory services to the student. That was an issue, and those compensatory services have been provided and confirmed by the OCR, and they have confirmed that no further action is required. OCR Complaint number 2. The complaint was that, the allegation was that Stargate had admission and enrollment policies and practices that result in the different treatment of and disparate impact on students with disabilities. The specific objection was to our then current policy, actually on our admission form, where we asked whether students had IEPs or 504s before confirmation of eligibility, and admission lottery. So it was the fact that we asked before they were actually put into the lottery, so it was a question of whether or not we could use that information to somehow discriminate. That was filed on December 28th of 2017, and the OCR conducted analysis of our admissions data. We supplied admissions data to them, showing that the records for the 2015 and 2016 versus the 2016 and 2017 school years, we tried to compare the admissions of folks who would have been identified as having IEPs or 504s versus those who didn't. The statistics, based on our data, showed that there was no difference. And before the OCR actually was able to complete their investigation, we agreed with them to simply change our admissions policy and change our admissions forms to address any of their concerns. So we reached a resolution agreement on August 22nd, 2017, and as a part of that resolution, we agreed and were required to have staff training about non-discrimination at the time of admission. And that training has been completed. We've reported it to the OCR. We're waiting on confirmation from them of the completion, but we have conducted that training. We had to update all of our admission documents with specific non-discrimination language that was approved by the OCR. We also have to identify our Section 504 Title II coordinators, and we needed to remove any requests for information related to disability or for special education records as part of that admission process. And so all of those documents, including all of our documents on the web and the web pages themselves, have been updated. The OCR has confirmed that those have been properly updated and there's no further action required. Our community handbook was to be updated to indicate that Stargate does not discriminate against students with disabilities in recruitment and admissions, and that handbook has been updated, confirmed by the OCR, and no further action is required. We have to submit to the OCR for review and approval written guidance designed to ensure non-discrimination in the enrollment of students with disabilities, and documentation showing new guidance disseminated to staff. That new documentation and guidance has been sent to and approved by the OCR, and there is no further action required. And then we have to provide the OCR with all reports, grievances, or complaints from parents regarding disability discrimination in recruitment or admissions from the period of August 1st, 2017 to August 31st, 2018. And that is, that is in process, and it is due, again, obviously, August 1st, 31st, 2018 hasn't happened yet, and we have until October 1st, 2018 to provide the OCR with those reports. OCR complaint number 3. The complaint was, or the allegation was that Stargate denied a student a free, appropriate public education by failing to implement the student's Section 504 plan and failed to respond appropriately to sexual harassment harassment of the student by a peer. This was filed on May 24th, 2017. On October 11, 2017, the OCR issued its findings stating that there was insufficient evidence to support the complainant's allegations and therefore was closing the case. OCR complaint number 4. This was a complaint or an allegation that Stargate failed to promptly and equitably respond to a report that a student at the school had sexually assaulted another student off campus. This was filed on June 7th of 2017, and on December 1st, 2017, the OCR issued its findings stating that the evidence supports conclusions that Stargate violated Title IX by failing to adequately investigate and redress the school-based effects and hostile environment resulting from the reported sexual harassment, failing to implement adequate interim safety measures in a timely manner, failing to eliminate the hostile environment and safeguard against retaliation, failing to have a Title IX coordinator, and failing to ensure that the necessary staff were trained on Title IX. Title IX, again, is prohibits discrimination based upon sex. The resolution from the OCR was that we had to identify, train, and communicate an individual to serve as Stargate's Title IX coordinator. And Lynn Allen, who is the school's CFO, she has been designated as the interim Title IX coordinator, and she has attended multiple training sessions. We will be identifying a permanent Title IX coordinator for the 2018-2019 school year, and we will be reporting that to the OCR. All staff was to be trained on Title IX harassment and sex discrimination. And we have put together training materials, and those training materials were sent to the OCR for review. This is one of the areas I said that we've updated the slides. So since our last presentation, we've had a few updates. So on March 23rd, the OCR requested revisions to the training materials that we had provided, and then on March 29th, we submitted a response to the OCR. Create a Title IX discrimination report form. We have created that form, and we have provided that form, including some revisions to the OCR for approval. Here's again another update. March 23rd, the OCR approved the report form, and it will be posted to the website and the community handbook by April 22nd. We had to offer safety and support services to the impacted students, and those students are currently receiving support from the school counselors. An update on March 23rd, we are to provide an update to the OCR on the status of those services for the students by June 1st of this year. We have to provide to the OCR all reports, grievances, or complaints regarding peer-on-peer sexual harassment amongst school students from December 1st, 2017 to May 31st, 2018. That hasn't happened yet. It's in process, and once the May 31st, 2018 date comes, we will make our report to the OCR. It is due by June 22nd of 2018. OCR complaint number 5. There was an allegation that Stargate failed to promptly and equitably respond to alleged sexual harassment of female high school students by their coach, despite being on notice of the alleged harassment. This was filed June 28, 2017. On December 13, 2017, the OCR issued its findings stating that the weight of the evidence supports conclusions that the school violated Title IX by failing to promptly and equitably respond to alleged sexual harassment of female high school students by their coach, despite being on notice of the alleged harassment, failing to design a Title IX coordinator, failing to designate a Title IX coordinator, failing to adequately disseminate notification of its policy against sex discrimination, and failing to adequately publish its Title IX grievance procedures. As a part of the resolution, we were required to develop policy, procedure, and process for filing complaints of sex discrimination. We created a Stargate policy that mirrors the district policy 8400. It includes also some clarifying information, and we have sent that to the OCR for review. We were awaiting OCR feedback. The update on March 27th was that the OCR requested certain revisions to that policy, and so we will update the policy based upon the feedback we received by the OCR, and we will provide that update to the OCR by April 26th. Upon OCR approval of that policy, we are to communicate the procedure and information to the communication in both English and Spanish, and we will do so. The update on March 27th, again, was that they requested revisions to the policy, so once that policy is approved, once we submit it back to them, we will be communicating it out to the public in both English and Spanish. We are to provide to the OCR for review and approval proposed staff training materials on Title IX, discrimination and harassment, similar to one of the other complaints. We sent those materials to the OCR on March 23rd. The OCR requested revisions to those training materials on March 29th. We submitted a response to the OCR, so we are now waiting feedback from the OCR. We have to provide OCR all reports, grievances, and complaints related to Title IX by June 22nd, 2018 and January 25th, 2019. Those are in process. We will make those required reports to the OCR on the required due dates. We have to submit to the OCR for review and approval plans for a secondary school assembly relating to sexual harassment, including how to recognize and report, and to conduct the assembly following OCR approval. The plans for the proposed assembly were sent to the OCR. The update that we just received on March 27th is that they requested specific revisions to the proposed assembly, and we are going to, based on that feedback, send to the OCR the revised assembly materials by April 26th. And then, let me see. Okay, I see it's getting cut off a little bit, but the last one was offer counseling to all former players for the fall 2015 and or fall 2016 semesters, inviting them to speak to school counseling staff about any inappropriate behavior by the former coach. And those counseling, that counseling has been offered to the former players, has been reported to the OCR. The update on March 27th was that the counseling was confirmed by the OCR and no further action is required. OCR number 6. There was an allegation that Stargate retaliated against a staff member by constructively discharging the employee after engaging in activity protected by Section 504, Title II, and Title IX. This was filed on June 6, 2017. The findings were that the OCR conducted an investigation, and prior to completion, the school agreed to voluntarily address the allegation, and we entered into a resolution agreement on December 21st, 2017. As part of that resolution, the school board was required to submit to the OCR for review and approval a staff climate survey to gauge whether an environment of retaliation exists Following the OCR approval of the survey, the board is required to administer the survey, report the results to the district and OCR, and submit to OCR for approval proposed remedial measures to ensure non-discrimination, including non-retaliation if necessary. As most of you know, we have a community survey and we do a staff survey. That was done earlier in the year. It included certain questions related to this, but those questions weren't pre-approved by the OCR because we didn't have time to get those and we wanted to continue to do our normal surveys. But we did propose the specific survey questions related to this to the OCR, and on March 27th we got an update from the OCR where they proposed, they approved the proposed survey. The staff survey completed and results and proposed remedial measures, if any, will be shared to the OCR at Adams 12 by April 11th. The school is to submit to OCR for review and approval written policy on procedures for filing complaints of discrimination, including retaliation. The school is to disseminate the policy following OCR approval and confirm dissemination to the OCR. The draft policy was submitted to the OCR. We received an update on March 27th where the OCR requested certain revisions to the proposed policy, and that updated policy will be sent to the OCR by April 26th. As part of the resolution for complaint 6, the school is required to provide to OCR for approval proposed staff training on retaliation and discrimination. The school is to administer the training following OCR approval and confirmation, and confirm that training to the OCR. The draft training materials were provided to the OCR. On March 23rd, we received an update where they requested specific revisions to the training, and on March 29th, we submitted a response to the OCR based upon their feedback. The school is to timely respond to inquiries from the complainant's prospective employers and provide an agreed upon reference letter. And then by May 31st of this year, and then later at December 31st of this year, we are to update the OCR on who we receive reference check requests and our responses to those requested reference checks. Those dates have not occurred yet, but we will meet those deadlines and make those reports to the OCR by 5/31 and then later by the end of the year. The school is to provide the employee with money for annual health insurance deductible and for lost wages and confirm those payments to OCR by December 31st of 2018. All of those payments have been made and confirmed by the OCR. The OCR confirmed on March 27th that all of those payments have been made and no further action is required. OCR complaint 7, there was an allegation that Stargate discriminated against a student on the basis of disability. Specifically, the complainant alleged that Stargate denied the student a free and appropriate public education by failing to evaluate and place the student in a timely manner, failing to implement the student's 504 plan, failing to implement the student's individualized education program, or IEP, and failing to conduct his manifestation determination before significantly changing the student's placement. This was filed on February 25th of 2018. So the findings are none at this time. We first learned about this complaint on March 16th, so less than a month ago. We are currently working to draft a response with our legal counsel, and that is due to be provided to the OCR by April 13th. So moving forward. So we resolved all of the OCR complaints other than OCR's complaint number 7, which we will be responding in just about a week to OCR. We're currently in the monitoring phase for each resolved case. We have fully cooperated with the OCR through the entire process, and as a result of the OCR complaints, we've drafted new policies, new procedures, and systems to ensure future compliance. We've increased our staffing and services for twice exceptional students. We've developed training for all staff and administration around Title II, Title IX, Section 504, and admissions. We've assigned an on-campus Title IX officer and added non-discrimination language to all of our materials. While we are certainly not proud of the high level of OCR complaints, as a board and administration, we see this check and balance as a systems audit, and we welcome to make our school the best it can be moving forward. We've seen growth and change this year as we implemented all of these new policies for the betterment of our students and the strengthening of our overall community. Listen, there are some missteps. There were some things that go back 24 years as a charter school that we never had in place. And they've been brought to light. You know, the OCR complaints, they're legitimate complaints, and they're serious, and we take them seriously. What we can do as a community, as a school, as a board, as an administration, is when we get these complaints, we investigate them, we look into them, we work with the OCR to determine whether or not there was wrongdoing, and we try to figure out what we do moving forward, whether it's changing a policy, whether it's doing training, whether it's providing counseling to affected kids. Whatever it is that we need to do, we're committed to doing it. And so, you know, I don't want any of us to look at these OCR complaints as frivolous or anything like that. They're legitimate complaints, but we also feel that we're a better school today than we were before these. There have been things that we were not aware of, things that we didn't do as well as we should have, and all we can do going forward is learn from these mistakes, try to ensure that we've got the policies and procedures to make sure that these specific issues are addressed, and do everything we can to prevent future ones. And that's what we're trying to do. Remember, it's all about them, right? Okay, so this is the portion that we're going to go through the questions that were submitted to us for prior to the last town hall. Couple of things to note. Some of the questions, well, and actually I will get into it, but the questions, there were some questions that had a common theme, so rather than answer 5 questions about the same exact thing, we tried to consolidate the questions so that we could answer them in an efficient manner. There were some questions that had specific individuals in the question. We've anonymized the questions. We didn't want to post a question that would reveal anything related to a particular student or community member. Again, very focused on ensuring that we are protecting the privacy of our community. So one of the questions was, who contributed to the creation of this town hall presentation, the question selection, the PowerPoint slide creation, the script writing, plans for fielding questions? The answer is myself, Brad Schoenfeld, and Elizabeth Williams. We were designated by the board to create this presentation. We worked in consultation with the executive director. Our legal counsel and the rest of the board reviewed this presentation prior to any of the town halls. The next question was, did the board respond to each and every question that was submitted for the finance town hall as well as the board communications town hall? When we did the finance town hall, we did a similar process where people could submit questions prior to the town hall, and we tried to respond to them in a very similar format. As I mentioned before, no, we didn't answer all the questions. We received many questions that related to similar topics, and we attempted to consolidate those questions. We also received some questions that we believe were not appropriate for this forum, including questions that related to specific students or community members, which we cannot address due to privacy and confidentiality reasons. I will say this over and over and over again. If any member of the Stargate community submitted a question that was not answered, we invite that member to contact the board directly. If we didn't answer your question, it doesn't mean that we don't want to. It doesn't mean that we're not listening. So please feel free to reach out to us if your question is not answered. Why has it taken so long for the board to provide the community with information about the OCR cases? So we didn't feel it was appropriate to inform the community about particular allegations until investigations were conducted and findings were determined. The board has included high-level updates at a number of its meetings, and for those of you that do come to our board meetings, first of all, thank you. But second, we do provide an update at those board meetings of each of the OCR complaints. As I mentioned earlier, we always know that communication can be better, especially since all community members are not able to regularly attend our board meetings, and so we are committed to being more transparent and communicating better with the entire community. This town hall is hopefully an evidence of us trying to take that step. How is the board ensuring that we are meeting all of the OCR requirements and deadlines? So we are working directly with the administration and the school's legal counsel to monitor our timely compliance with the various OCR requirements. For those of you that were at the board meeting on Monday, usually it's Wednesday, we had our last board meeting on Monday, there have been 2 board members that have specifically been delegated to work with the administration and legal counsel to ensure that all of our required reporting and everything that we need to do is being done properly and done timely, and we are reporting and coordinating with the OCR to meet all deadlines. Again, as a board, we can't do it all together because that would be a board meeting, and we only meet once a month, or we've been meeting more frequently to deal with other issues. But the fact that we as a board can't meet together is somewhat of a challenge for some of these things. So we've delegated 2 board members to work with the administration and legal counsel to ensure that we have continuous compliance with the OCR requirements. Why was the executive director not put on administrative leave as a result of the OCR complaints? So administrative leave is not a requirement in these situations. It is implemented in circumstances when it is believed that the continued presence of the individual would be detrimental to the school or would jeopardize an investigation, and we did not believe that it was in the best interest of the school for the executive director to be put on administrative leave, and we believed it was in the best interest of the school for him to continue to provide support. Is it true that one of the Stargate board members was involved in the events related to an OCR complaint, and did this create a conflict of interest? So, as I mentioned before, we cannot discuss specifics regarding any particular parents or students' involvement. However, if there was a board member or his or her family involved, he or she would be required to immediately inform the board and to recuse himself or herself from any discussions or actions related to the complaint. Any involved board member has fully complied with this conflict of interest policy. If we are non-compliant with the OCR requirements, will we lose our charter? So whether or not our charter is renewed is based on a number of factors. The various OCR complaints and our compliance with the OCR's requirements will likely be considered by the district. As I mentioned earlier, we're working hard to ensure compliance with these requirements, and we've already begun discussions with the district on our charter renewal, and we do not anticipate problems with our renewal. How does the board intend to repair the damaged reputation of Stargate due to the OCR complaints? The board recognizes the importance of our reputation And while the OCR complaints are not ideal and highlight certain deficiencies in our processes and operations, we still believe that Stargate's overall reputation is positive. We're working hard each and every day to address the issues raised by the OCR complaints, to review and update policies, procedures, and training opportunities to ensure that they are appropriately addressed and to limit future claims. We are also reviewing our communications to provide for more complete and transparent communications with the entire Stargate community, as evidenced by this town hall. Is the board aware that the requirement from one of the OCR complaints was that Stargate had to survey the staff about retaliation with OCR-approved questions, and the survey questions contained in the staff survey in January were not approved by OCR? Well, yes. As I mentioned earlier, our staff survey is administered around the same time every year. And we did specifically include questions regarding retaliation, but those questions, we did not get approval from the OCR because of timing. We submitted those questions. We have now gotten responses from the OCR regarding those questions, and we are now going to take those approved questions and do a follow-up survey with the staff with respect to retaliation. We understand that one of the OCR investigations involved a student that was charged with a sexual crime. Why was the community not informed of this situation? Why would the board and executive director cover such a thing up given the serious safety issues presented here? So neither the executive director nor the board was trying to cover anything up. We fully cooperated with local law enforcement. We complied with a temporary protection order that was issued by Adams County courts, and we implemented a safety plan with need-to-know staff. Safety is a top priority for us, and we work hard to ensure that all children in the school are safe. The student was removed from the school once the student was charged pursuant to Colorado statute, and that is Colorado Revised Statute 22-33-1055A. The next question is, we've heard that certain records related to admissions were missing from the school's admissions files and a failure by the school to strictly adhere to admissions requirements. Why should the community not perceive these missing records as an effort to cover up loose practices and favoritism with respect to admissions? So, the missing records, this was referred to in one of the OCR reports. This relates to applicants failing to provide all required documentation for enrollment consideration. When the OCR conducted its investigation regarding its admissions, it communicated to us that it was difficult to analyze the entire pool of applicants because some applicants did not submit all of the required documentation. Our admissions lottery is attended by and audited each year by a retained attorney. We have and will continue to comply with all admissions policies and requirements. We often have situations where people who apply to school do not complete all of the information that is required to have a complete record of admissions. So the missing records that they were talking about in order to do their analysis was that they didn't have all of the information because the prospective students did not submit all of the required information in order to have a complete enrollment package. Has Eagles Landing been investigated in connection with the OCR complaints, and have they been cited by OCR for any violations? No. An issue about document retention was reviewed by OCR, and Eagles Landing has changed its procedures to assure better record keeping. A dispute also did arise outside of the OCR process concerning mandatory reporting and keeping adequate records of reports, for which a violation was identified by the Department of Human Services, and Eagles Landing has taken steps to improve this aspect of its record keeping. We've heard that in connection with one or more OCR complaints and investigation, the executive director has made some comments and has taken some steps that were inappropriate and insensitive As a parent at Stargate, how can I regain confidence in our executive director and board based on this behavior? There have been some statements and actions made by the executive director that the board agrees were inappropriate and insensitive. The board has addressed these matters directly with the executive director, and we are working hard to ensure that all investigations are handled appropriately and with the respect that they deserve. The next question is, we have witnessed situations in which the executive director has not been completely truthful. Why does the board allow for falsehoods to be spread? The board desires for all communications to be accurate and truthful, all of the time. As volunteers who are not at the school full-time, although sometimes it feels like we are, but as volunteers, we are not aware of all statements being made by the executive director or any other Stargate employee. Certainly, if we become aware of an inaccurate statement, we quickly attempt to address the situation appropriately. Next question, what kind of sexual harassment training did the administration have before the OCR incidents occurred? So prior to the OCR complaints, the administration had not received formal sexual harassment training, but we are working with Employers Council. For those of you might know, it used to be called Rocky Mountain Employers Council. It's an independent group that's here in the area that many companies, organizations, municipalities work with respect to HR-related issues. We have retained them to help us with training. We also retained an HR consultant to make sexual harassment training an annual training requirement. The OCR is also reviewing a proposed sexual harassment training for all staff. That's what I alluded to as part of the resolution for a couple of the OCR complaints. The next question was, how does the board justify the role of the executive director and the top-heavy administration, including the amounts spent on these positions? So this was discussed in greater detail at the Finance Town Hall, but as a charter school, we are responsible for our own budget and organizational structure. We've moved from a single building K-8 school to a K-12 school on an expansive campus. Our student population has doubled, resulting in additional administrators being necessary, such as an office manager, an HR manager, and various support staff. The board and administration work each year to determine the needs of the school going forward. The district has actually recommended that we hire more administrators. We're currently having discussions for future years, and we may consider organizational changes. For those of you who saw the post, we've already started some of that work with respect to some organizational changes, and we will continue to evaluate those and make decisions that we think are in the best interests of our entire community. The next question, the School Accountability Committee, also known as SAC, originally had an oversight role to ensure the board operates within the bylaws and governmental laws. The board voted to remove this oversight role. With no oversight role within the school community, please explain who oversees the board. Well, the SAC's role today is the same as it has always been. The role is actually defined in the bylaws, and it says to monitor the effective governing of the school by assessing the school's progress towards its mission. Many have interpreted this authority as giving the SAC a watchdog function over the board, but this has never been in the bylaws. And by law, the SAC is an advisory body, and charter school experts advise the board, we've talked to them about this, that this watchdog role was unique to Stargate and not best practice. In 2015, the community, not the board, it was based on the board's recommendations, but the community voted to revise the bylaws to clarify the role of the SAC. Final decision-making authority must reside with the board, and it is the Stargate community, it's all of you, that oversee the board and have the power to remove board members through the recall and election process. Just like in a company, there's a board of directors, decisions have to end somewhere. and it's with the board of the directors, but a company answers to its shareholders, we answer to you as the community. The next question. Unlike all nearby charter school bylaws, Stargate's bylaws state that the treasurer officer role is optional. Will this board work to remove the optional designation on this very important officer role to ensure that the board takes seriously its fiduciary duty regarding the school's finances? So, the optional piece of the treasurer, that's not unique to Stargate. For example, Pinnacle Charter School also has it in their bylaws that it's optional. We're not really aware of why this optional designation was included in the bylaws, and you can rest assured that the current board and the boards previously don't view it as optional, because we're not aware of any time in our history that we haven't had a treasurer. However, I think it's a legitimate concern, and we've actually already started talking about whether or not we want to remove that section in the bylaws. There's certain sections in the bylaws that require the entire community to vote to amend the bylaws, and there's certain sections that the board does have the discretion to amend. This happens to be one of the sections, so it's something that we're actually now looking at it. But why it's optional in the bylaws, I don't know what the reasoning was in the original bylaws. But again, we've always had a treasurer, and will always continue to have a treasurer, at least pursuant to what the current board believes. The next question. In our most recent financial audit, there was a recommendation for better internal controls to avoid any misappropriation of funds. What is Stargate doing to address this recommendation? So, this recommendation is fairly standard for an organization of our size and with our limited management resources. For those of you who have been involved in audits for organizations, this recommendation is almost on every single report and audit that you will get from your CPAs. But it's an area that we realize always needs or could be improved. So we are working with the CFO, with Lynn Allen, to identify areas of improvement, and we will attempt to implement procedural controls in consultation with our financial advisors to ensure that we always have the appropriate controls in place. The next question was, what approvals are required when signing a settlement? What dollar amount requires board approval? What level of non-financial commitments, such as non-disclosure or fulfilling particular actions, require board approval? If a settlement commits the school to spending money in future budget cycles, how is that approval handled? So any formal settlement requires the approval of the board or the board's delegated members, and it has to be signed by the board president after consultation with our legal counsel and with our insurance company if it is an insured claim. All settlements that include monetary payments are reviewed with the school CFO to understand the current and future financial implications. The next question. When an employee leaves the school, is there an exit interview conducted? And if so, who receives the feedback provided by the departing employee? So our standard practice is to have the HR manager conduct an exit interview on or around the employee's last day, and to share the results of that interview with the executive director and the entire board. Whether or not someone wants to participate in the exit interview is a personal decision, so we cannot force someone to participate in the exit interview process. The next question. We understand that certain prior employees have entered into agreements with Stargate that contain gag orders. Will the board waive these gag orders so that these employees can participate in investigations? So it's standard for all settlement agreements for confidentiality provisions to be included. These provisions prevent disclosures to third parties and would not apply to disclosures required by law or to investigations by or on behalf of the school. And to the extent that any employee who is subject to any confidentiality obligations is asked to participate in any investigation and needs confirmation from the school, we are committed to confirming to them that we want them to be truthful and honest and discuss with any investigator whatever needs to be discussed, and they would not be restricted from doing so by any confidentiality obligations. The next question, does the school have a gift policy as it pertains to staff and students, as well as potential students in the admissions process? No, we don't. Maybe this is something that we need to look into. It's when we actually looked at this question, it was something that we were all, at least Elizabeth and I were just like, I never thought about it. So is it something that we maybe need to consider? Maybe. I think that's something that we should look also at what other schools are doing. I'm not aware of other gift policies. So I think a gift policy is more, for example, I'm sure a lot of us give holiday gifts to our teachers. Should there be a policy where someone can't give a large gift to someone because there may be a concern that your teacher is then going to give preferential treatment to your student, or maybe it's someone to give a gift to the school and to get preferential treatment in the admissions process. I will tell you, and it's kind of interesting, I actually got a call from someone at one point in time and said if they wanted to make a donation to the school, would there be any way that that could help with the admissions policy? And I said, first of all, please make the gift to the school. But no, that doesn't help you. You're put in the lottery just like everyone else. But I do understand there are some schools, someone told me about a school out of state that actually does have a thing where you can actually give like a certain amount to the school and it does give you beneficial treatment. That's not what we're about. We're about having a fair, level playing field for everyone. I don't care if you make donations at the gala. I don't care if you give your teachers great gifts. We should all be treated the same.
If you guys do implement something like that, we should consider that there are parents that give bigger gifts to the holidays to these teachers and want them to help compensate for salary.
Right.
Like for a couple of teachers this year, all parents contributed to a holiday bonus.
Right. No,
So I
thank
just
you.
consider that.
Yeah. And great. Next question was, why have questions from the audience been denied or declined in some board meetings? The community has a right to ask questions, either in open mic or in response to topics on the agenda. As I mentioned before, charter school and board best practices suggest that board meetings be kept to business only and public input be limited to public comment. We only have one board meeting, one business meeting per month, and the purpose of that meeting is for us to conduct business. If we responded to and had conversations with the community throughout these meetings, we would never get anything done. We wouldn't be able to accomplish our required work. So, again, that doesn't mean that a question or a concern should go unanswered. So, if you have a question, if you have a concern, there's an email address through which questions can be sent to the entire board, and there's a mechanism for private discussion to be held during executive sessions. Next question. 4 of the current board members, and those 4 were Jan Coleman, myself, Callie Herzog, and Christina McMillan, were on the board that voted to renew the executive director's contract for the 2017-2018 school year. Why won't these board members resign? So as a board, we work hard to make decisions that are in the best interests of the Stargate community based upon all of the information known to the board at the time, some of which is available only to the board due to privacy and confidentiality requirements. The 4 board members in question stand behind the decision to renew the executive director. So as Those 4 board members stand behind their decision, and none of them have indicated a willingness to resign, and each of them is committed to continuing to look after Stargate students and staff. As always, we answer to you. If you feel that board members are not doing a good job, you should take whatever action is necessary through the recall process to recall a board member. Again, we're trying to do the best that we can. And with that, I want to say that as volunteers, we spend countless nights away from our families doing this. We are always focused on the mission. And if there's anyone who truly believes that we would make a decision that we believe is not in the best interest of our kids and our community, I don't know how you can think that. Because if that was the case, then we wouldn't be board members. We wouldn't be volunteering our time to do this. Does that mean that every decision we make, we get right? Does that mean that there's not improvements to be made? No, it doesn't. But when we make a decision, we consider all of the facts that we have. Again, some of those facts we have that we can't share with you. And so I know it's hard, but there are some times where you need to trust us that we are looking after your kids, we're looking after our teachers, we're looking after this entire community, and we're trying to do the best that we can. Non-transparent executive sessions for the specified reason of, quote, personnel issues. This is compared to 430 minutes per agendas in open meetings. How can the community be ensured that the board is using these lengthy closed-door sessions for legitimate reasons? These private meetings appear quite excessive. So just so you know, I did not go back and confirm the math on this. So whoever submitted this question, I'm accepting as truth the number of minutes that they said. But they're correct. We've spent a lot of time in executive session, and that is not our plan, nor our desire, nor our family's desire. But there's been a lot to discuss. And under legal requirements, those are required to be handled under executive session. We always want to make sure that we are making informed decisions, and unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity to work together to address these issues in an alternative forum. And I will tell you, we as board members all the time, something comes up that under law has to be done in an executive session, and we sit there and we say, okay, so we need to plan an executive session. And listen, the first thing that goes on is, like, we really need to do this? But all of us always say, yes, we need to do it, because we're not going to skimp. We're not going to try to just make a decision without having all of the facts, without having discussions, without being able to talk to each other and to talk to those that might be involved that we invite to the executive session. So if in order to make decisions that are in the best interest of the school, we have to have executive sessions frequently, then we have to have them frequently. And we're going to continue to do it to make sure that we're making decisions that are informed and are in the best interests of the school. Okay, the next question was, we have already heard of teachers and other key employees who have left or will be leaving. What is the board and administration doing to retain valued employees? So, just like any organization, employees leave for different reasons. Could be that they're unhappy, could be they're relocating to be close to family, financial difficulties, could be a lot of different things. We always want to attract and retain top talent, and we are continually working with the administration to figure out ways to make our environment appealing and to maintain competitive salaries. We'll be rolling out staff-wide training covering certain topics, evaluating instructional programs, and analyzing our financial resources and staffing needs as we attempt to pay our teachers more. For those of you who might be aware, there's actually been a compensation committee that is made up of a number of staff members who has been meeting this second half of the year and is working with the CFO to try to come up with a plan for compensation for our teachers. A comment that was made earlier by one of our attendees here is a legitimate conversation. I think our biggest challenge as a school right now is keeping our teachers and making sure that they are happy. And one of the big challenges that we face is we only have so much in terms of financial resources. We've traditionally been under Adams 12 when it comes to paying our teachers. We try to be at about 95%. Our goal is to be at 100%. Personally, I think 100% is not enough. If you look at how much teachers are getting, we have teachers that have two working parents who are teachers, and they have trouble making ends meet. And so, as a board, I commit to you that is one of our objectives, is trying to look at how we can not only attract very qualified teachers who are focused and committed to gifted education, but also to keep the teachers that we have, because we know that our teachers have lots of other opportunities, and yet they continue to stay with us. Sometimes I don't know why, but we love our teachers, and we really need to do anything and everything to make them happy.
But they need to hear that from you, because all they see is the negative. They need your positive. They need your emails, cards, letters. Let them know that you guys are that group that's going to support them no matter what, so they want to be here. Please, that's my ask to you today, is just let the teachers know how much you love and care about them, how much you appreciate them, and give them that as much as you can.
Yeah, and listen, again, I don't want to downplay any of the complaints that have been made. But when a teacher sees turmoil or sees an environment that right now maybe they sit back and say, hey, do I want to deal with this? And that's their prerogative. But as Josh said, if you like your teachers, if you think that they're positive influences for your kids, let them know, because we want to make sure that they understand that without them, we don't exist. And so please, tell your teachers how much you care about them. Okay, the next question. Has the board ever faced a situation where it must choose between transparency, student safety, individual student privacy, and the reputation of the school? And this was actually my favorite question, because the answer is every day. This is what we do. Right? The board is always faced with tough decisions, and the volunteers who make up the board are committed to making decisions that are in the best interest of our entire community, including our students and our staff. We try to be as transparent as we can, but sometimes we're legally prohibited from disclosing information. We recognize there's always room for improvement, and we will continue to do everything we can to not only have but retain the community's trust. Next question was, why is Stargate still a good choice for my child? So, as hopefully all of you know, Stargate is the only charter school designed specifically to serve the needs of intellectually gifted children. Our community of learners is always our first priority, and our goal each day is to ensure they are working toward an adulthood that engages their passions, their intelligence, and their gifts to create a happy and fulfilling life beyond their school years. Our school's unique environment and approach to education allows children to fully embrace who they are without judgment. As is evidenced by this past year, the Stargate community is always open to improvement, and our staff, the board, the administration, we are working hard to implement these improvements as fully and quickly as possible while still providing the best education possible for our students. Listen, whether Stargate's right for your child, that's a decision for you to make. I'm going to take my board hat off now. I'm a parent now. I love the school. I love it for my kids. My kids have amazing teachers. They have amazing friends. They have people who care about them. And is it perfect? No. My daughter got in 4th grade. So my family experienced being at another school. I think sometimes, especially for people who have been lucky enough to be here from the start, we take for granted how wonderful this place is. And, you know, is the grass greener somewhere else? Maybe it would be for some folks, but I know for me, again, this is not word solicited, me as a parent, this is the best place for my family, it's the best place for my kids. And I know there's lots of people who share that. And just because someone doesn't share that, I know I try to stay off the social media because I just don't think it's productive, and I get upset about it, and so I'm trying not to do it. But I've seen some things where someone put out there and they say, hey, you know, for those of you who complain, if you don't like it, leave. That's not the right answer, right? You know, for those who are complaining, and I shouldn't even use the word complaining, for those who are bringing up concerns that they have, we have an obligation to try to address those concerns. At the end of the day, yes, anyone can decide whether or not this is the right place for you and your child or children. I personally made the decision that it is for me, and my wife has made the decision, you know, we made the decision together that this is the best place for our kids, and we're committed to that. And hopefully we're going to do everything in our power and learn from our mistakes so that folks here who are already here continue to believe that, and folks who maybe had concerns, they say, okay, we're on the right track and I feel comfortable now. But I do want to say the idea of telling people, hey, if you don't like it, leave, that's not productive for anyone. And we want to make sure that we learn from our mistakes and we make this a school where everyone feels like it's the best interest of their families. So that was the last question. So I know this is a long presentation. I said that we'll take 30 minutes, and I'm committed to doing that, so we'll spend 30 minutes of fielding questions. If we don't get to all of your questions, feel free to email us. Let's just, I got you, Pam, you're first on the list, but if there are people who want to leave, why don't we're going to take just like a 2-minute break in case there are people that do want to get up, because I want to make sure that everyone hears the questions that people have. So we're going to take 2 minutes, and we will regroup in 2 minutes. know that there are people who probably, have some questions. So we're going to start with questions. Ms. Stolte.
First, I want to say thank you to the board.
And you know what, I'm going to try, if I can, to hand the mic to the person asking the question so everyone can hear, and for especially also the Facebook Live feed, I want to make sure that everyone hears people's questions. So.
Thanks, Brad. First, I want to say a generous thank you from my heart, from my family, to the administration and board for all that you've done for us. I have a two-part question. The first is, are you able to share, and do we know how many of these complaints went through the school first to find a resolution before going directly to file a federal complaint? And then secondly, with all of these new complaints, valid or not, and the additional resources required, now what does the financial impact have on our school with those hiring additional staff, and will that take away from other programs for our kids?
It's mandated.
I will attempt to answer that, and I welcome any board member who's still here, also to answer these questions, as well as the administration. So, your first question with respect to have all of the OCR complaints, have those complaints been filed first through the communication pathways? I can't get into specifics. I will say that not all of the OCR complaints came through the communication pathways. But I can't get into the details on the particular one, but not all of them came through. With respect to your second question, although this isn't probably an answer, the answer is yes. In terms of how will things, when we look at our staffing, we look at what the needs are of the school. So we only have so much of a budget, so there are times we make decisions, and when I say that's the administration, the board, we provide oversight, but for like a lot of the day-to-day things, we as a board are not, deciding we need another 3-4 teacher. That's not what the board's role is. But we're always looking at the budget and working with the confines of the budget, so there are times where we need to add someone here. Maybe we're not able to add someone somewhere else. Now, the issues, getting the right staff to address the OCR issues, those are a priority. So to the extent that we need more special ed teachers, or more counselors who can deal with the issues that we have with our kids, we're going to do everything we can to try and staff those as best we can. Does that mean that we may not be able to staff things in some areas where there's also a need? Maybe. And every year we're just going to look at it. For example, this year's budget, next year's budget, 2018-2019 budget, did not have in the budget assistant principals. That was actually budgeted for 2019-2020. Rob, who is the principal of secondary school, and Missy, the principal of the primary school, they're dying. Like, they spend so much time on discipline and administrative issues that we as a board said to them, your focus is supposed to be on instruction, on curriculum, on making sure that our teachers are getting the support they need. And not to say that discipline isn't important, but that's typically what an assistant principal does. And so we as a board did somewhat dictate to them, hey, I know 2019, 2020 is when that's in the budget. Find a way to do it for next year, because you need to be focusing on the classroom. But the answer to your question is, we only have so much, and we at times we put in one area, we have to take away from another area. That's just the realities of the situation.
Brent, can I address part of that? As part of
Hold on, I think you.
So as part of the fundraising committee that I'm on, a lot of like what you're asking as far as things being taken that, there's pathways to the fundraising page where you guys can ask for money. I mean, we have a certain amount of, the fundraising money is different than the budget. And so we have this pocket of money that we actually went through last night at the fundraising meeting of all the kids and the teachers and the staff that ask us for money. We have to go through it and approve it and not approve it. We had a little first grader ask us for $50 for his club. I mean, and of course, what are we gonna do? Yes, we do those things. And we're happy to do it. So again, we make sure that what isn't financially part of the school budget, that's where fundraising steps in. Okay, so all of the things that we do with fundraising, and we ask you guys for a lot of money, it's because we want to make sure our kids have what they need. Okay?
We're going to do a paddle auction right now. All right, anyone else? Yes.
I have a very basic question. I think one of the questions that came in was about exit interviews for staff and that kind of thing, and it mentioned an HR manager. I'm just curious who that is.
So the HR manager was Deirdre Carlisle. She actually is no longer with the school. So right now, the HR manager function is being done by Lynn Allen, our CFO, with the support of other administrators. One of our top priorities is to hire a full-time HR manager for next year. And so that, if it hasn't been posted, I know that Lynn is posting it in the next week or so. And that is one of our priorities, to get someone in place. The idea is by June, because we need to get someone to help with the onboarding for all the new teachers. Right now, also, we've retained Employers Council to provide HR support while we don't have a full-time HR manager. But the idea and the goal is that we will have a full-time HR manager who is an experienced HR manager starting in June. Yes, and that's a good point, Callie. Our HR manager, right now, the plan, if you remember with the OCR, we had to identify a Title IX coordinator. Lynn Allen is our temporary Title IX coordinator. Our goal is to find an HR manager who has experience with Title IX, and we will make him or her the Title IX coordinator going forward.
One of the topics that you addressed was about the reputation of the school. I'm a little concerned because I personally have been working to try to get a lot of the Ivy Leagues to start recruiting here, and I've gotten feedback that because of this OCR issue, that they are a little hesitant to start recruiting at Stargate. So I'm wondering what efforts, or will you be able to communicate kind of the plan of action that you're going to do to rehabilitate the reputation of the school, so that these leading Ivy League schools, in addition to that, Stanford University, where I serve as a guest lecturer, would be willing to come back and entertain the idea of recruiting at Stargate. They no longer are, or at least the impression I'm getting is they're not as willing as they used to be as a result of all this OCR issues.
So that's a question that's near and dear to my heart. Probably anyone that's got a high schooler here. My daughter's a sophomore, so we're starting talking about colleges, and it's a concern that I have. I don't think actually that the OCR complaints are what's keeping any schools away. One of the challenges that we have is that we are a new high school. We don't have any data. So, for example, we don't have SAT scores. We just started getting some PSAT scores.
Well, my contacts were willing to take a chance, and now they're backing out.
Okay. Well, that's obviously unfortunate. I will tell you that one of our big focus is on what can we do to make Stargate attractive to leading universities and colleges. When people saw part of the role that Josh is going to be playing going forward is as community and student liaison, one of his specific tasks is with respect to getting those colleges to look at Stargate and want to recruit Stargate students. So love to, and to the extent that there are parents who would love to, help with this process, but, we're obviously, the OCR complaints, we're addressing them. We're doing everything we can to move forward from them, but we are going to put together, and specifically with Josh, we are going to be working on putting together a very comprehensive plan to market to these schools, to get them to see, not Stargate for some OCR complaints that we have, but to get Stargate to see the incredible students that we have that are winning knowledge bowls, that are, getting great scores on their SATs. If you look at some of the public high schools that, before we had a high school, I mean, it was funny every year, like the valedictorian or salutatorian used to be a former Stargate person, right? And I've got a good friend of mine who goes to Fairview in Boulder, and she went out to Berkeley to go do a student visit, and they said the admissions person said to them, when they found out she was from Boulder, Colorado, they said, oh, you go to Fairview or you go to Boulder High? We need to get Stargate to be coming off the tongue of these people. And listen, it's a challenge for people who have decided to stay here at high school. My daughter is starting to get these letters from colleges, right? And it's great. Compared to some of her friends at Fairview or Boulder High, she's not getting as many. And that's just because we're not known as much. But we are committed to doing everything we can to get us to be known.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Sure, just push.
Okay, it was a great question. I just wanted to make a comment, and that was that there's many gifted, knowledgeable parents that chose this school and they're staying here. And the exciting thing, I'm fairly new to this too, but in gifted education, we have others that are now joining next year. So we have the recent past president of SANG, Supporting the Emotional Needs of the Gifted, and she is going to attend this school next year. We have luminaries in gifted education from other states inquiring now, and I'm a previous board member for years and advocating for the gifted and talented, and we're getting calls when we bring in lectures of what is Stargate. And I'll give you one more example. Last year, we gave a tour to this school to someone from Hong Kong, and she is supporting the emotional needs of the gifted in Hong Kong. And they're moving here to Colorado, and they're down to 2 schools. So they're looking to either enroll in our school or one other in 2 years. And the newest topic in gifted education is a new direction that we're seeing. Families that both parents were born in the United States, and now they have been raising kids 2-3 continents that are coming back to the States. There's a new whole arena of discussion on how do they serve their gifted kids coming back to the state. And in this global conference, because people have inquired and asked me about Stargate, people now have started to say, tell me more about Stargate. So it was interesting to have somebody from Hong Kong come last year, tour the school, go back and talk to SANG in Hong Kong. So I'm excited about some of the speakers that now are asking why they don't come to speak at Stargate, and they're coming to Fairview. So I think that it's out there in the public and more families. This is not going to scare them. In fact, I talked to some of my colleagues, and because we've been through similar situations in similar schools, we've seen schools grow. A parent that's coming here next year, she actually started a gifted school, and so she called me after the recent, she read something. And it definitely did scare her because she's been there the growing pains of starting a gifted private school. So people are staying and people are coming. So now we need to work on getting it out there to the colleges too.
Thanks, Nancy. And I just asked Josh to say a couple words on this issue, because this is something that I know is near and dear to his heart, and something that we as a board are tasking him to work with the rest of the school to focus on.
And I appreciate that. And I think we are looking at the profile of our students as what's being presented to these schools, and as they're going out and presenting them individually as a self. And while the Stargate reputation has gone through its peaks and valleys, and as you all know from times you've applied and times you've been here, it's been kind of a rolling river, and we got to figure out where in this journey for our kids is their next steps going to be. And I think with this college application and the profiles they're building for themselves through the Adroit program and the menu of options they have this year's juniors for colleges and internships, we're going to be super impressed as we start seeing these roll out as we announce where they're going next year, the amount of dollars of scholarships they have at their disposal, and what that's going to look like. So I'm excited about the challenge, and I think it's going to be a great thing for our kids, but we are going to tap into you and your network, and who do you know from what schools you went to, and how we can tap into the places that you might be well connected with, whether it's your undergrad or your graduate, or maybe it's family that you know, because that's part of this network that we're going to try to build with this comprehensive plan that Brad talked about.
As long as it's not the University of North Carolina. Nothing against University of North Carolina. I went to Duke for law school. It's a rivalry here. All right, other questions?
In regards to the OCR complaints, and I know you touched on the communication pathways and some of them not being followed. Is there a plan in place to help get that information out there so that parents know the proper communication pathways and aren't just going straight to the OCR or perhaps being persuaded to go straight to the OCR? I know it's on the website, but I think sometimes you really have to force it at parents for them to see it, and so they know.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I mean, one, we always want people to follow the communication pathways. We can't force people to do so. So, if people decide that they want to go directly to the OCR or some other organization or the district, they have the prerogative to do so. We believe that if they follow the communication pathways, it creates a better dialogue to resolve things quicker. I think it's a very good point that we probably need to be communicating the communication pathways on a continuous basis throughout the year. So Missy just mentioned, in her Hishki happenings or Rob's cable connections, we can be continuing to do so. We do mention it at the board meetings. There's not a lot of attendance at the board meetings, so maybe it doesn't get heard, but when we send out our reports on the board, we can do it. So I think on a more regular basis, it would be good to do. One of the things that we've also talked about, folks talked with the administration, is as a part of the registration process, really trying to focus on that, whether or not we even make it a separate thing and, make it like a commitment that someone can sign that says, hey, I commit to following communication pathways. Again, it's not a legal requirement that someone follows it, but I agree we need to continue to focus on it, and so we will definitely do that. Yes. She said not just sign it, but also read it and understand it. Yes.
I guess I got a question in relation to putting the number of OCR complaints in perspective, and I know you may not have the answer to this, but I'm just thinking, I get in my car every day, and how many people are killed on the US roads, but I get in the car every day and drive my kids to school, and that's just an everyday thing. I'm hearing there's 7 OCR complaints in the last 2 school years. I don't know, other schools of this size, do they have 20 complaints against them? Do they have 100? Do they have 0? I've got no idea of a perspective. Is 7, so to speak, normal, what you might expect? Or is it like, wow, everybody else has 0 in the last 10 years?
So I'll tell you, 7 I think is high. Is it, are there other schools that are receiving OCR complaints? Yes. I don't know specifically how many one school has received over another. There is an OCR website that does have that information. It is really tricky to find because I actually looked for it myself and I only found stuff that predated, that went up to 2014. So none of the Stargate ones I could find. But then someone told me that they were able to find it. So it is out there. We are not alone in terms of having OCR complaints. How many other schools have had, I don't know. I think 7 is too many. And we should be doing everything we can to I don't want to say so that to reduce them. If there are legitimate issues, that's okay. Let's learn from them, but we hopefully are taking steps to minimize or reduce the number of complaints that we would be receiving.
Actually kind of piggybacks on that. One of the things that I noticed as a common theme just hearing it, and I could be wrong, is that policies and procedures were not quite where they needed to be in terms of up to the district standards or up to what we need in order to meet the needs of the kids. And I fully trust and believe that you guys are meeting the things that have met the OCR regulations in terms of policies and procedures. But that's just what's been identified in those specific complaints. What processes are you taking to identify and evaluate the other procedures and make sure that there aren't openings for future OCR complaints in terms of making sure our policies and procedures meet where they need to be?
And it's a great question. So obviously the policies and procedures that we have identified based upon the OCR complaints, right, that's what's right in front of us so that we can see. But I think one of the things that we have been, that we're now cognizant of, is we need to be looking at all of our policies and procedures and making sure that we've got appropriate policies to deal with these issues. We're looking at Adams 12's policies to ensure that we've got policies that align to those. There are some policies that we actually refer to the Adams 12 policy. One of the issues is that, you know, for like Adams 12 or other districts, they have people who work full-time to focus on these issues. As a charter school, we don't have that, you know, that ability. And we don't necessarily, we aren't able to tap into the district as much as of the other schools with respect to it. But I agree, it's a thing where right now, unfortunately, we've been very reactive. And one of the things that we're hoping is that we can get these behind us and we can, you know, move forward and then really be proactive to ensure that we're not facing these situations before. I don't know if you've got it.
And I think the important thing to remember too is as it relates to Title II, 504, IDEA, all the areas that the OCR has jurisdiction over, they've seen every one of our handbooks, staff, community, they've looked at every one of our policies, and the policies we refer to the district policy on, and they're giving us feedback on those things. So I was talking to Mike that we actually are sending them over the district's non-discrimination policy that we use in our handbooks, and they're saying, well, here's what needs to be changed, and it's the district's policy. And so what we are looking at now is how we can bolster those, but make sure that it's not just saying, here's district policy 8400, it's here's Stargate's non-discrimination policy that we're working through our legal counsel and writing through with, as well as our new non-discrimination coordinator, as well as sending everything over after that to the Employers Council to look at it from an HR perspective. And so the board is taking all these steps with administration to make sure that everything that we've done and seen has been reviewed by multiple legal authorities, as well as our legal counsel.
My son has an IEP for 8 years now, and I've seen the learning services grow quite a bit over the last 8-9 years, and it seems like some of the OCRs is around that, the learning services part. So I have two questions. One is, what is the ratio? I mean, 30 students adding is quite a bit. What is the ratio for Stargate for kids that uses learning services, I don't know how to describe that, versus other schools? Is that higher here? I suspect that it would be higher here. I think there's a connection between gifted and talented and learning disabilities. And as well as, what do you see as an administration on what's the future there? Expanding staff, that kind of thing.
So ratio-wise, and right now I think there's approximately 30 students in the K-5 building that are on IEP with one current learning specialist. Most of those students on the IEP are for speech language, so they specifically meet with the speech language pathologist. So it might be a 15-to-1 ratio for the learning specialist and then 15-to-1 for the SLP. In the other building, there's 35 students and 2 learning specialists. We're actually hiring one more learning specialist next year to help with the elementary, so there might be 4 total. But then the special service providers, SLP, OT, psychologists, as well, that services kids based on what their plans call for. From a district perspective, I can't speak to the ratio numbers because you usually like to keep them at a 25-to-1 is kind of what they look at, but it's all about minutes. So if a kid needs to meet with that provider for 45 minutes a day, you can only do so many 45 minutes a day kids, if that makes sense. So it's very individualized. The thing that I believe for us that makes it an added component is all of our students that are in our learning specialist department, they're all twice exceptional. They're all gifted. as well as have that IEP or 504. And so I think that adds a layer of complexity into it because it's not like they are just a severe needs kid or a mild moderate needs kid. They also have these academic gifts as well that has to be taken into account, and how we can focus on their gifts instead of their challenges. So I think it's a very unique monster from the side of how do we focus on the kids while supporting them, while providing them enough minutes. And monster's not the right word, but I think it's a good challenge for our staff to take on.
Like compared to like public schools as far as ratio of kids with IEP versus or learners versus not, that's not asking.
Yeah. You might have one learning specialist that has 6 kids on their caseload because those 6 kids take up, every single day she's got to be with every one of them for 45 minutes. Whereas you might have one that has 18 because they have smaller minute requirements. I don't know what the district's ratio is. I know what ours is right now, but I think it's all individualized based on the kids' plans.
I don't know. You might be able to. How many kids are on IEPs?
For us, it's growing. We're going to be probably closer to 13% of our population, which would be considered to us exceptional. That's including IEPs and 504s. And I think it's probably more of an 18% number at a standard district. But that's something to just Google and check out. But yes, so sorry.
And I think, I did see in one of the OCR reports that they said that our percentage was lower than most other schools. We see it growing. And part of it is, I think, because of some of the steps we've taken, we're able to identify things a lot better. But one of the things that's a big challenge, this is just anecdotal, I don't have any evidence other than we talked to someone who is a counselor at another school and said, what's your caseload? And she said, well, I've got 12. And I'm stretched. And we've got folks who have caseloads that are way beyond that. And so that's the, like Pam Stolte's question about having resources and spending in one area and another area. We're trying to figure out the best way that we can make sure that the kids have the support they need while also being able to provide in the other areas that they need. And it's a challenge. It is. So, any other outcome?
Getting back to the public perception of Stargate's image, I want to, first say that our charter, our mission is unique and valuable, and it absolutely fills a critical need in the community. I think most of our students would not be able to excel and develop the way that they have the opportunity to here. And our mission is enabled by our charter, which is very unique, but it also provides a very unique vulnerability. Our charter would never be renewed or would never be agreed to today because it gives us the ability to discriminate. We can have as an admission standard that a child has to be identified gifted and therefore discriminate. And that is what enables us to build a population that we can work on moving towards our mission. And we've done a great job so far. We have a community and administration of people who are committed to the best interests of our students and to trying to do things correctly. And we've done a lot of great things. But right now we have some very big vulnerabilities. And I haven't heard any acknowledgement today that there is an outside group that is actively working to get our charter either revoked or not renewed. There are people who have that as their goal. I don't know why. There are people that are against charter schools in general. There are people who are against our discrimination provision, and who knows what other motivations they have. I want to know what we are doing to manage our reputation, because as you guys all know, there's been recently a media campaign started. We have had a national magazine as well as lead stories on local news, and I can't imagine that this could not have been anticipated. It's obviously time to coincide with, one, the renewal of our charter, and it's also been time to coincide, I think, with understanding that we're refinancing our bond. So, as we've heard already, there are outside entities that we don't control, such as Ivy League schools that have already responded to this feedback, and given us feedback that they're already responding to this highly rated charter school bonds, highly, because charter periods are much shorter than bond terms. I think Moody's has 20% of the rating is factored on charter renewal risk and government relations. And those are things that we have a very big public perception problem with right now, as well as the charter itself being renewed by Adams 12. The Adams 12 board, the people decided that is a bit of a political process, and now we're prosecuting this in the public eye. So to be sitting here now, maybe 2 weeks since the article in Westward, and now a week almost since the TV news, and to have not heard a response from the board or the administration other than taking part in an interview on TV, it seems to me that for some reason it's not connecting. We're not understanding the seriousness of the situation. To hear the board, to hear you tell me today that you don't anticipate any problems in our charter renewal process, that's a little bit incredible, and it kind of gives me an impression of really poor risk assessment and management strategies, and so far, pretty poor risk response. And I think that, in addition, contributes to the perception of poor governance and administration. And again, those are things that we need to manage perceptions of.
So, you're right, we cannot manage the court of public opinion, and, it doesn't feel good to be on that end of it, I'll be honest with you. But the internal conversations are what are important. Our work directly with Adams 12 and the ongoing conversations we're having with them, with their superintendent, with the executive director who's in charge of charter schools. And so all I can tell you to rest assured is that this conversations have been ongoing for the last 6 months. We have the rubric for what we need to renew our charter, and then we've indicated our intent to do so. We've also just renewed a brand new school called New American Schools to the district, which was them taking a huge risk on a very low-performing school that's had an outstanding number of issues as a Title I school. And so what we're looking for, whether we get a full 5-year renewal or whether they give us a probationary track, we anticipate that our charter is going to be renewed through Adams 12 because our student performance is what the success is built on. 5 years ago, when I took over, we had a similar upheaval where parents were concerned and complaints. The fact that we have these OCR complaints that we've been able to comply with and show the compliance with them is actually to our benefit because we've had these systems audits. Adams 12 has been under DOJ monitoring for many years. They've had financial issues coming up. If you remember, Fox are doing news stories, so they're not immune to this either. But what we are doing is making sure that when we're asked something, we're responding and doing it with fidelity.
And one thing, Cheryl, we follow up, but one thing just to address, and I agree with you that the reputation, the news articles, the court of public opinion, it's important. And all we can do is we can cooperate. So like when these stories have come up and these reporters have come out, we've offered to talk with them. We've offered to make administration available to them. We've offered to make board members available to them. We've offered to make parents available to them. We can't control who they decide to interview and who they decide to report on. That's their choice. But you can rest assured that we take it very seriously, and we're trying to do everything we can to have the public opinion be that Stargate's a great school. And you're right, there are some people, I think, who do have their mission to bring down Stargate and not have the charter renewed. And they'll do what they want to do, and we just need to keep on focusing on the kids and to keep focusing on our staff. And whether from a marketing standpoint you agree or disagree, our role is not to engage in a negative smear campaign and try to go tit for tat with folks. We're going to stay focused on the school and do everything we can so that people see that we're about the kids, we're about the teachers, we're about education, and we're about giftedness. So.
And rising as one.
Rising as one.
Right, but my point is that we need to do real, concrete, valuable things to correct situations that can be perceived by somebody doing an honest, serious analysis. the outside, because I'm not saying that the outside opinion is completely wrong. I think to dismiss it is missing a very big red flag in what we're doing here. But to say that we've responded to the OCR complaints, that's really the absolute minimum standard. I mean, we can't not respond to OCR complaints. So to be perceived to be ignoring it, to keep doing what we're doing, to just have some toxic cheerleading events and say that what we're doing is fine and good and we're all good people, that's really not enough when we're talking about the mission of the school that's bigger than individuals, and it's about making changes that not only work, but can be perceived to work.
So I guess I'll respectfully disagree that we're not just doing the minimum. I mean, when we are responding to the OCR, sure, we are focused on responding to the requirements that they have put on us and making sure that we comply. But
structure changes, the things that got us into the OCR complaints and other issues.
Well, again, I'll disagree because we've put together new policies, we've put together new procedures, we've looked at organizational, we've looked at staffing. We are doing things on a daily basis. When we sit there and work with the administration to figure out what are the best roles and responsibilities, who should be the person who is responding to the OCR, who is the person that is monitoring, do you see something that comes out with a bullet point list that says, here's each and everything that we're doing? No, you don't, but we're doing things each and every day. We are coordinating with the OCR. We're coordinating with the district. For those of you that don't know, we have a district liaison that we work with regularly. They know everything that's going on. We are working with them, and so I know it's not, you don't get this sense of security when we say we don't, expect any issues with our renewal. Listen, we can tell you what our perception is based upon our interaction with the district. We are talking with them. We're working with our liaison. We're working with, we're having communications with the entire executive team at the district. And, based upon the issues, are they concerned about some of the issues that have come up? Sure. Are they also very complimentary of a lot of the things that we've been doing to deal with this? Yes, they have. And we're going to continue to work with them. And so, yes, as I stand here today, I do not expect any issues with our charter.
I just want to say that I agree with what he's saying, and I know there's a lot of people that do not agree. And I'm on Facebook, now I've heard from people that are on Facebook that there's been a lot of cheerleading and a campaign to say the school is great. And I think that it's important that there are steps taken and transparent bullet points that say what is changing, not just the OCR. Why don't we have more concrete? Why don't we know what's going on? Besides OCR.
Well,
just because you want to know what the suggestions are, they're whispering. What suggestions do you have? So what? The other side, just the people that are here, in their purple shirts, that want everyone to know that we. I support Josh. I support the school, but I want to know what is changing. What specifically is changing? Not just the OCR, what the school is doing to make changes.
So a lot of the changes, hopefully you saw on the slides. So one, we have had to and have welcomed putting together various training materials with respect to non-discrimination, with respect to harassment. We've updated everything from our admissions policies to some of our other policies to ensure that we are being compliant with respect to any type of harassment, non-discrimination. We're looking at our hiring practices to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure we're getting the right people in here. From an organizational standpoint, right? People saw the announcement of Josh's changing role of starting next year, and that's something the board and Josh have been working together to figure out what are the strengths of each of the people in our administration and at our school, and put them in the areas where we have needs and we think they can be the most successful. I know, for example, for Josh, his passion is getting back with the kids, right, and not just sitting at a desk and being an administrator. We're going to be looking for executive director, whether or not we're going to have someone for this next school year or the next year. right now the plan is that we're going to have our principals report directly to the board. It's a similar structure to what Prospect Ridge actually has. That's a structure that they currently have. They don't have an executive director. We think an executive director is something that we should have, but also based upon this, when we're looking for who's going to fill that role, we're going to be focusing on different areas, on things that we see where we have gaps. Maybe it's, sort of educational instruction and curriculum. Someone who has experience dealing with the OCR and some of those things, that would be a plus. Hopefully, even on the slides, you can see the things that we are doing to actually address these issues. And we're going to continue to do them and hopefully continue to get better. I'll get back to you. Some people haven't asked any questions. And I'm going to say, for like 3 more questions because we're kind of out of time. But for those of you who want, I will stay here for a few minutes also.
I don't want to use that. I'll project. Can you guys hear me in the front? And I'm not totally comfortable with being streamed on Facebook Live. I've got a couple of issues, so maybe that's something we table and I ask you guys directly, but I have stayed out of the social media swirl, and it feels a little bit like an ambush to have this happen. And again, not totally coherent, but here it goes. This is related to the meeting, the February board meeting that I was able to come to, when it really looked like a very well-organized ambush against the board and against the school. And as a parent who considers myself fairly rational, fairly competent, it was surprising. So to try to dig into all of this stuff has been overwhelming. So I guess 1 or 2 part question. The board meeting minutes are tens of pages long or hundreds of pages. How do we make sure that we are educated and informed and knowledgeable? And not only for ourselves to make our decisions for our families and our children, but we want to assist the board. And because of the parameters of the board meeting and what you are and aren't allowed to say, it's very hard to have that exchange and try to make your own decisions because there's clearly camps, there's clearly swirl, there's clearly different motivations. If we are so inclined to help, how do we help? If we are so inclined to do our own research, what are the best ways to do that? I guess that's the crux of it. Oh, and one more thing from the February board meeting. I think there was a second part. Can you talk about the percentage of people who vote in all of the elections at this school and participate? Because I will never forget going to my first State of the School meeting, which sounds like the State of the Union, which sounds like it's important. And there being more board members and faculty and staff than parents. So those 2 questions I think are related. Can you talk to those?
Sure.
Okay.
Hopefully I will address it, and if I don't, please let me know. So just so you know about the recording, none of the recordings are board sanctioned. Again, we can't do it, but the community has every right to do so. I hear some people love the fact that it's out there, some people don't.
Let me just say, my concern is that there is to Paul's point, there is a fairly well-organized group of people who I believe are using our attempts at transparency and communication against us. At least that, again, from
that might be the perception. And all I can say is we're going to continue to try to be as transparent as we can. I had something.
In order of transparency, you should say that Jan Kuhlman and you directly asked for this to happen by a volunteer parent. So saying that it's not wanted or not welcome, you guys asked for it. You specifically said, hey, why don't one of the parents do it? Because we can't.
We did not specifically.
Yes, you did. It's on record.
For it in terms of us wanting it to do. We got requests by the community for us to start recording. And what we said was, we cannot record. If a parent wants to do it, they should feel free to do it, and we will be happy to have them do it. Are folks going to try and use some of this transparency against? I don't know. I had one parent who came to me, took a quote that I had said in a board meeting, I believe out of context, and it was said in a much broader context. And might they do that? I guess they can. We see that in our political system today, right? You see quotes from politicians, and sometimes you're horrified by them, and then actually you do some more research, and you're like, oh, that actually maybe it wasn't so bad, or they meant something else. I don't know how to deal with that. With respect to being informed, I wish everybody was informed. As you said, we have typically at the State of the School, which is coming up on April 11th, Wednesday. There are times, there are years where, the number of board members outweighs or is very comparable to the number of attendees. And it is an important meeting. We go through literally the state of the school. We talk about our test scores. We talk about what we've learned, what the recommendations are from the School Accountability Committee, and what we as a board have as part of our plan to address their concerns. So it's a really important thing. And all I can say, if you want to be educated, look at the minutes. Come to a board meeting. If people are streaming it and you want to view it. Also, Mr. C has coffee with C's. There are a lot of things you can do, and I will tell you, we are always looking for people to help us. We can't do it alone. We designate committees for certain things, and so if people would be interested in volunteering for things, we would love to have you volunteer. We would love to have you participate, because we can't do it alone. So I hope I answered.
Yeah, can you talk about, I think at the February meeting there was discussion about the percentage of the community.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the percentage of voting. So, was it 17?
It's usually about 20% of our community participates, whether it's in fundraising, voting, and it varies from either direction depending on the circumstances. I think this last one we had like 24%. So it's improving, but as Brad said, anything you can do to help us educate yourself, to read the communications that we put out, all that stuff really helps.
And one of the things, if it was 20% last year, I think in prior years it's been lower than that. It's been like 17%, is just what I remember off the top of my head, which is, it's somewhat alarming, because it's a really small percentage. I mean, I do understand that there are some people, if you're content and happy, you don't feel the need to participate in these, and we would say we would love as much participation as possible, because whether it's positive or negative, the more feedback we get, the better we will be. I also know that for the expansion from a K-8 through K-12, there's likely to be a reduction in the percentage of participants, because what we've found is, whether it's right or wrong, primary school parents are more involved than the secondary school parents. So when we look at the percentages of people that respond to surveys, it's a higher percentage in the primary school than the secondary. And as we keep on increasing the size of the secondary, we may be in a situation where those numbers do you need this?
We're running into lunch.
Okay, so listen, we're running into lunchtime. We're going to call this meeting to a conclusion, but I know there's a couple questions I didn't get to, and Elizabeth and I will stay for a few minutes if you have